Hi folks, what I've got here is the new 3-rail O-Scale ALCO S-2 Switcher. It's made by Lionel, and we're going to check it out right now on Eric's Trains. Alright, let's go ahead and see what's in the box. And for today's unboxing, we'll be using this bad boy from my Swiss Army knife collection. This is my Victorinox Ranger Grip Boatsman. This thing's awesome. Alright, there's the box tag. Northern Pacific Terminal Legacy S2 number 40. Legacy control, run with Legacy TMCC or conventional. Bluetooth control, run with the universal remote or app. Fan-driven smoke, electrocouplers, Legacy rail sounds, and O31 minimum curve. And there's the box. Here are the instructions. It's always good to read these. We've got Lionel embossed into the styrofoam as usual. And there we go. Boy, this thing is absolutely gorgeous. Wow, look at that. That is beautiful. All right, let's get it up on the layout. And here we go. So the ALCO S-2 was a diesel-electric switcher produced by ALCO in the US and Montreal Locomotive Works in Canada between August 1940 and June 1950, with just over 1,500 units produced. The S-2 was powered by a turbocharged 6-cylinder ALCO 539 prime mover that produced 1,000 horsepower. A distinctive feature of the S-2 was the curved cab roof, and that was a result of ALCO engineer Ray Patton incorporating some Art Deco principles into its design. Today there are still a few S-2s and the closely related S-4s in service on short lines around the US and Canada, but for the most part they have long since been retired, but there are several examples to be found at various railroad museums in both the US and Canada. Now, Lionel's rendition of the S-2 that we have here was offered in their 2019 Volume 2 catalog, and these began arriving in stores in the spring of 2020. The length of the S-2 model is just a tad over 11 inches. The weight is 3 pounds 5 ounces. This engine has 1 pound 8 ounces of pulling power, which is decent for a switcher, and the minimum required curve needed to operate this locomotive is O31. Now, as you can see, I ordered the Northern Pacific Terminal Company version of the S2, and the main reason I got this road name was very simple. I liked the paint scheme. But in the same catalog, they also offered 5 other road names for the standalone S2. Lionel also offered a model of the S4 switcher, and I'm not surprised they did that in the same catalog because the S2 and the S4 are almost identical, so I'm sure they use the same tooling for both models. And for the S4 switcher, they did 5 road names, and then finally they did an S2 freight set that contains an S2 locomotive, 3 freight cars, and a caboose. The materials used to build this model are on par with every other high-end model Lionel makes. For the trucks, pilots, couplers, and fuel tank, you've got die-cast metal. There's a sheet metal frame, an ABS plastic body, and then brass detail parts. On the inside, this model is driven by a single flywheel motor. Oftentimes in O-Scale, the locomotives use 2 motors, one above each truck, but this only uses one motor. It's mounted right in the middle, and via a gearing system underneath, it actually drives all axles on this model, which is great. Lionel's been using the single motor setup on their switchers for several years now, and I like it a lot. They're not doing it because they're cheap and trying to save money. They're doing it to save room for something else. You know, one of the downsides of O-Scale switchers of years past was that they rarely had fan-driven smoke units because with two motors on board, there was no room for the smoke unit. But with these models, because they have a single motor in the middle, that frees up room for a fan-driven smoke unit, which is awesome. And because that single motor is located in the middle and not above one of the trucks, it means that, as I said earlier, because of that gearing system, it can drive all axles on this model. Now, this type of setup wouldn't really work on a full-size locomotive like an ST70 or something, because with a full-sized locomotive, you need that pulling power that you get from having a motor above each truck. But with a switcher, you don't need that much pulling power because a switcher's not going to be pulling a full-size train, so this is a brilliant solution. You get a single motor driving all axles on the model, which is great, and you get a fan-driven smoke unit. It's win-win. Now, aside from the cool motor setup on this model, in the lighting department, on the front of the engine, you've got lighted number boards, operational marker lights, and an operating headlight. On the back of the locomotive, there's an operating backup light. The interior of the cab is illuminated, and that light does turn off when the engine starts moving. This engine has legacy command control like you would expect. It's got legacy rail sounds and Bluetooth on board. When it comes time to run this switcher, obviously the preferred choice will be to use Lionel's legacy command system, as that will give you access to all of this model's advanced features and functions. However, you can also run this engine with Lionel's classic TMCC command system. You can also run this model with the Lion Chief app on your smartphone or tablet, thanks to the Bluetooth connection, and you can run this model conventionally with just a transformer and some track if you want to. So by this point in the video, you've seen most of the exterior of the locomotive while I've been talking, but here's what the underside looks like. There are 4 traction tires, 2 on the inner axle of each truck. You can see we've got a total of 4 axles. We've got 2 pickup rollers on this truck and 1 on this truck. And where the other pickup roller would be, we have the sensor for the Lionel LCS sensor track if you choose to use one. In the middle, we've got the run program switch, the smoke unit on-off switch, and then this switch enables or disables Bluetooth. And then underneath the front truck here, you probably can't see it very well. There's some holes there. That's where the speaker is located. And from this angle, you can get a better view of that drive system I was telling you about earlier. So the motor is located up in here in the middle of the locomotive. And then these drive rods go out from the motor and drive all axles on the locomotive. Pretty cool. While we're down here, let's talk about the pilots and the couplers. You know, traditionally in O-Gauge, the pilots and the couplers are connected to the trucks and they turn together. And that's a concession that is made in O-Gauge to allow large locomotives to get around the tighter curves that are typically associated with many O-Gauge layouts. But of course, it looks very unrealistic, and for that reason, in recent years, many 3-rail O-Scale locomotive manufacturers have been trying to get away from that when they can. And Lionel has done a pretty good job of it. On their larger locomotives, most of them now, they have semi-fixed pilots, and on this switcher, as you can see, we have fixed pilots and the couplers are mounted to the body and not to the truck, which is very cool. And the reason they can do that on this model is because it's short enough where you can have fixed pilots and body-mounted couplers and still have the engine be able to get around tight curves like O31. What's more, if we look up here, you'll notice there's an empty screw hole on either side of the coupler. That's a mounting pad for a scale coupler, and there's one on the other end as well. So if you wanted to get an even more realistic look for this switcher, you could remove these big O-Gauge couplers and install scale couplers in their place. Not bad. Now, of course, many times people who are not into O-Gauge will ask questions like, why do you have those big ugly couplers at all? Why do you have 3 rails on your track? Why do you have these big flanges on your wheels? And why do you run your trains on such tight curves that it necessitates putting the pilots and the couplers on the trucks? Well, one of these days I will do a video explaining all of the idiosyncrasies of O-Gauge, but in a nutshell, most of the oddities of O-Gauge can be explained by a combination of history, tradition, practicality, and ease of use. All right, the last thing we're going to do before we start this thing up is BFIMO, best feature in my opinion. Well, in my opinion, the best feature of the Lionel S-2 is its low-speed operation. This thing crawls like molasses. Lionel is already known for their great low-speed operation. In my opinion, Lionel locomotives have the best low-speed operation in the hobby, and even within that context, this thing is absolutely amazing. It's like watching paint dry, the way this thing creeps down the track at a speed of 1. It's incredible. All right, now comes the fun part. Let's go ahead and start this thing up.
This is the Yardmaster. Do you read me? Over. Copy that. Read you loud and clear. Start her up and stand by to pull. Acknowledge. Out.
All right, so let's check out the horn. And here's the bell. Here's a couple crew talk samples.
Yardmaster, I'm made up, ready to pull. Am I clear to make a move? Over. Acknowledged. The lead is yours. Over. This is the Yardmaster. The lead is clear. Over. Copy that. I've got clearance to pull. Out.
And lastly, here's a sampling of the RPM levels. We're on the roof. And back down. All right, I've got some cars behind our little switcher, so let's go ahead and roll it out. right, that about wraps it up for this review. I hope you enjoyed it. You know, what more can I say? This is just a really cool model. If you'd like to pick one of these up for yourself, the retail price is right at $500, $499.99. But keep in mind that if you go through a good Lionel dealer, you should be able to get a bit of a discount off that retail price. And as always, if you're looking for a good Lionel dealer, try my favorite train store, which is Legacy Station. You can find them on the web at www.legacystation.com or give them a call at 770-339-7780. Now, before we go, I'd like to put a big thank you out there to all of my current Patreon supporters. Your support means the world not only to me, but to the future of this channel. If you'd like to become an Eric's Trains Patreon supporter, you can do that at patreon.com/ericstrains. And finally, if you'd like to buy an Eric's Trains t-shirt or anything else I might be selling, check out the Eric's Trains online store at ericstrains.com/store. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm Eric Siegel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. While we're down here, let's talk about this cat here.